All right, it is the end of the month, Saturday, September 30th, and welcome to the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. Let's go ahead and look at the price action for the indexes this week, where we'll cover the monthly candle closes as well. Big moves this week. Let's go ahead and start with the NQ. So, this week, pretty choppy, big moves up and down. Ended up kind of wicking down back into this liquidity pool that we talked about from back in August. Like we see a nice kind of double bottom forming there on the weekly. That does show a little bit of strength, but this like somewhat of a doji close kind of talks about potentially having some indecision in the market there. I think that's pretty expected for the end of the month, How can we inject maximum confusion into the market, pushing the price around ended up with just a doji, but I think the bigger thing to pay attention to here is this forming of this double bottom on the weekly, potentially a good sign of moving higher. So we'll have to kind of see what happens going forward, but this is a nice look. If we lose this, we're starting to look pretty ugly here, maybe coming down to either this 14,300-ish, maybe 14,400-ish area, or potentially even down here at the 13,000s, which obviously we don't want to see, but that's possible. If we look at the actual monthly, it kind of looks very similar to that, right? We have this nice kind of double bottom into that liquidity pool, which is a nice look for potentially seeing higher. So we'll kind of have to see what happens next month, but we could see this hold even coming all the way down to this 14,400-ish level. But if we lose that, we're starting to look like maybe coming down to the 13,000. So we'll just kind of have to see what happens next month. But right now, it does look like we are holding nicely in this area, this liquidity pool. So we'll just kind of have to see what's going on going forward. But right now, it looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and move on to the ES. Another down week, very similar, kind of wicking into this 4,300 support area. We don't trade with these, but if you look at this trend line, that kind of matched up with kind of that same area, so there was, a lot of interest here. If we look at the daily, you can kind of hone that in and see, all of that area, as soon as it wicks down in there, gets bought up. Still, this is kind of a lower low look, so not the greatest look, even though this does look like a nice support area. We really want to see this come back up and close above 43.80s. We want to see this level regained. And then that will start to look good, or better, I should say. If we look at the monthly, kind of all makes sense. I know that price only TA had kind of drawn this liquidity box last week, which I also really like. We see a lot of price interacting in this area, and sure enough, we hit that area and get bought up. So, this looks good potentially for higher, especially if this trend, this upward trend, is going to be respected. But if this breaks, we're starting to look at 4,200 or 4,100. So watch out for that. We'll have to see what's going on. Going forward with that, Price, why don't you talk about the RTY for us? I know you have some interesting thoughts on this.
Yeah, so we're making lower lows a little bit here on the weekly. It did have good wicks on both sides, but on the monthly, let's look at it, and you can see how it's coming down after not being able to close and achieve this area. It also didn't have a higher high, so we're a little worried about it. It certainly could hold here at this zone where we see all these wicks and a lot of price action in there. So this is a super normal movement. But if we don't hold this, we're going to be looking at lower, perhaps even below 17. And then that would give it the fuel it needs to create higher highs.
Yeah, I think that 1732 really has to hold, or you're going to see 1600, that liquidity box potentially. And the reason that I think that is that the previous area, it's that 1678-ish area, has already been tested enough times that will be weak and probably just blast right through. Not really the kind of look that you want to see, but we'll have to see what happens. Let's go ahead and move on to gold. Man, gold just got hammered this week, and it was actually looking pretty good up until this point. But the big thing to talk about here is that it flushed all the way down through these, and makes sense, previously tested levels, so they don't hold up, and closing below this support area. So what we really want to see if gold is going to move higher It needs to wick back up in here and close in the coming weeks. And you know, obviously this printed a really ugly red candle on the monthly too, so we want to see this close above this green support area on the monthly as well next month. So if that fails, we're looking at this box being kind of the last area to hold before we're going all the way down to 1700 almost for sure, if that doesn't hold up. So gold in a pretty precarious spot. This is kind of the last area to hold if we're going to have like somewhat of a higher low on a higher time frame, right? So we really need this to hold here, or gold is gonna look for support much lower than it currently is. Not in a great spot, but you know, we'll have to see what's going on with that in the coming weeks. Let's go ahead and actually, do you have any thoughts on that, Bryce? I don't want to skip over you.
No problem. I think over the next month we could see like this wick down and then a hold up above would look really nice. Now, of course, it'd look really nice if it came back up to 19 and closed there. But if we see a nice wick down and a hold, that's still okay, even though it's coming down lower. But we want to see this level here. We want to see this hold 1874.
Yeah, it needs to hold, or it's going to look real ugly. So why don't you go ahead and cover the Dow features for us?
So on the monthly, we previously came up and it achieved here, and then are coming back down to find support. And you'll find here that the major level that it's coming down to is right in here, which makes sense with this movement, that we can tie it all together with it here. We want to see this area hold, and on the monthly, you'll see how important this is. We did see higher, but we didn't get a chance to close up there above these wicks, which is what we were hoping to achieve. So now that we're down here, we want these lows to hold and to regain 35. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it did gain above that 34,700, but seeing this, the thing that really looks ugly about the monthly candle to me is that we do have this wick up here and then selling off and closing near the lows, so that tells me that we could see a bit lower before popping higher. I kind of think that I actually really like this line you drew. I think if we close below that, we're looking pretty precarious. We're going to come probably down to 32,800s. And the thing that could be ugly about that is that you could consider that there's a lot of price interaction, like a lot of closing and wicking into that level. So that's a great level to hold. But if we lose that, like if this ends up failing as a level, we got a long way down to go. We're looking at 31,200. So that's like a 1,600 point drop from there. So that could be real ugly if that doesn't hold. But, you know, this is still, the line you drew is a nice area to hold. You could, you know, potentially take a nice trade with good risk to reward there. If you're expecting to move back higher and that to hold, you know, you can have a nice little tight area in there that you could hone in on the daily chart. But other than that, you're just gonna have to see if this ends up holding going forward. It's a long way down if it doesn't. Let's go ahead and cover oil. CL1 oil kind of did what we had been calling for quite a while now, since we saw it kind of break out of this area. It did reach 93.5, ended up wicking above and getting all the way up to 95, and then closing back down. So, you know, we have this almost, not quite, but definitely a doji looking candle, so indecision. That's not unexpected, right? We knew this was a major area of interest, so it would make sense that a lot of people who kind of slurped up down here in the 70s and 60s, that's a big move. Take some profits up there. I could see this coming down to, we have this nice line here at 85. I could see that potentially holding, but also a really nice area of interest, this liquidity pull down here between 82 and 83. That is a prime spot for a long. I still think we're going to see much higher on oil. I think 117 is, considering the price action here and kind of the trend of oil, this is almost guaranteed to happen. Now, I can't tell you exactly when that's going to happen, but I do believe we're going to see 117 in the future here. Certainly before we see new lows, we're going to see new highs on this leg in oil for me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's way more likely it'll get to 117 than even like 75.
Yeah. Yeah, it's consolidated there for too long, and it's got all that liquidity behind it. It's moving up for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Let's go ahead and cover the dollar. Why don't you take care of that? Your ideas on where it's headed have been right in a hurry, so let us know what you think.
Well, we definitely achieved in a big way on the weekly, and even more so on the monthly. You can see how it's closing. It closed up above this this area here that's been acting as resistance. That's great news for higher. What we want to see is a bounce in this area and continuation. We can see that this area has been very important to price action in the past, where it produced this large leg up, and closing up above that is a big deal. So what we're going to see is higher, even 109 before we see lower. It's probably more likely that it goes to 109 than it is 104, or even 104 flat is not an impossibility, but I see it going to 109 before it could come back down to here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's blown through quite a few important levels, especially actually great to look at the daily here. This was a major level. Then it just ran through that, and we actually even see on the daily, it actually wicked down there after cooling off a little bit, and then got bought up again. So there's a ton of strength in this area. I think we're gonna see. I could see 107.2, potentially being a daily cool-off place again, but having wicked into here, I think we could just blow through that again. I think we're gonna see 109.5 real soon. The exact time frame on what real soon means, I can't tell you, I guess, but at the same point, I think that just there's really no reason for the dollar to go down. It's got so much liquidity behind it from this consolidation. This consolidation is almost what is that, 9 months or so? That's absurd. There's going to be a ton of power behind this move, and there's no reason it won't go to 109.5.
Yeah, but you can see how 109.5 is definitely the biggest resistance on the whole chart.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if you're looking for the dollar to turn around, that's
the level that you want to see it. And if we take a real long view, that kind of makes sense, right? You have a lot of interaction over a long period of time at that area, and that's kind of why that happened there. I actually totally could see that level breaking, and I'm not saying that it'll just break right through that, but I could see this kind of rebounding and finding support somewhere and going back to a new high on this leg. I could see 117 very easily. If we look at a very long-term trend, you can see that after consolidating at these lows, there has been some pushes towards new highs. Not unreasonable after all this scooping over this long period of time that you could see that. So, but that's more of a long-term call, obviously. It's just kind of my thoughts about the dollar moving forward. Let's go ahead and cover the KRE, right? So if we look at the monthly, actually looking pretty solid. We've had these support lines that have been drawn for a while, and we actually see it kind of wicking down into those and getting bought up. Not maybe the most clean look on the lower time frames, right? So this is kind of the last area to hold on the weekly before we make either potentially find support at a sort of an equal low here, or potentially make a new lower low, which is kind of a breakdown type of look in a precarious spot, but did have a little bit of a green close this week, so maybe not horrible, just something to start kind of worrying about with where the banks are trending. What do you think?
I think it's on the weekly. I think it looks really good. It's just making a higher low right now, but exactly like you said, we need this area to hold. Otherwise, it's a lower low, and that starts to get a little more looking like it'll find new lows.
Yeah.
we can see here. Let's actually flip to the daily real quick. The one thing is the daily is kind of achieving right here, so that could hold up and produce this movement up, and that would make the weekly look really good if we can achieve 45 again. But for the time being, we'll have to see what happens here.
Yeah, I would have really liked to see the monthly achieve 45, but obviously we haven't gotten that yet. Doesn't mean that we can't moving forward. We hit that 48.5 level, and it made sense that it pulled back from there. I would have liked to see, a bounce off 48 that closed above 45 would have been textbook for gaining and looking for support lower. We don't have that yet, so that's the only reason I'm a little more concerned about it. Doesn't mean that it doesn't look good. Like I said, the monthly still looks good if it bounces and holds from 41 there, but I'm a little more concerned about banks than you are maybe, but that's fine. I will agree with your analysis on the lower time frames. It does look good, so we'll have to see. But that's it. So thanks again for tuning into the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. If you do like this kind of content, go ahead and sub to the Hub and consider joining our Trader Hub Discord community server. You can find it using our link in the description. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
Bye.